Okay, welcome everyone. It's 20 past the hour. I won't say which hour because everyone's coming from different zones. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm your sessional host for the session. I'm Sarah Junaid from the UK. And today we're going to have two presenters. So it's going to be a more relaxed session. We'll have a bit more time for this hour. And we won't stretch it to the hour, but our speakers will have a bit more time to speak and a bit more for Q&A. So the plan is we'll have about 7 to 10 minutes per presentation, and each speaker will have about 10 minutes for question and answer. And at the end, we will wrap up. And if we wrap up early, that's no problem. We'll have an early break for the next session. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker. I believe the host will play the video first.
This presentation reports on cultivating higher order thinking skills in EFL technical reading instruction of a freshman English program of Hongjia University, Taiwan. This report was authored by Cindy Chow, also the speaker, Binchen Li, and Benrui Zhai. Introduction. With higher order thinking skills, or its acronym HOTS, being ranked among the most in-demand skills for job candidates globally, unfortunately, pedagogical approaches used in higher education, including engineering education, still emphasize lower order thinking skills of remembering and understanding. With the above concern in mind, the freshman English program for College of Information and Electrical Engineering was redesigned to incorporate higher order thinking skills in classroom activities. Literature review of higher order thinking skills. The notion of HOTS is the process of taking stored information in memory and reorganizing and incorporating the information to achieve a purpose of novel or real-world situations. English teaching methods traditionally used in Taiwan tend to emphasize lower order thinking skills. Students are taught deductively with isolated lectures on vocabulary and grammar points. Even if teachers possess competence and knowledge to teach thinking skills, it is still difficult to teach Taiwan students to do HOTS because of their cultural traditions where students rarely challenge what they learn from the teacher. Literature review for Bloom's Taxonomy. Ever since its publication in 1956, Bloom's taxonomy has been used to serve as a pedagogical tool for designing question-based activities to teach thinking. Considering that students who know about different cognitive and metacognitive activities for learning will be more likely to use them, it is thus suggested that teachers strengthen students' awareness of cognitive processes in order for them to appropriately adapt to the ways they think and operate. Methodology. The purpose of this study was twofold. First, the study was aimed to develop and propose a HOTS-based procedure in technical reading instruction. And second, it aimed to investigate students' awareness, adaptation, and perceived impacts of the HOTS-based instruction. Research design, data collection, and data analysis are briefly described here. Participants. 2 freshman English classes of automatic control engineering and 2 of communications engineering, with a total of 115 students were surveyed in the final week of fall semester 2020. Students' English learning experience, English language proficiency, and their knowledge and experience about HOTS are presented here. This part of the presentation describes the proposed HOTS-based technical reading instruction and its procedure. First of all, the time length of the instruction was 18 weeks, with a 50-minute session per week. The reading material of the instruction was compiled by chairs of the 2 collaborative departments. Topics of the reading texts were all related to the latest development of technology, such as autonomous driving, AI, and deep learning. In addition to guiding technical reading comprehension and training reading strategies, the instructor's responsibility was to develop higher order skills by using primarily question and answer strategy to engage students in learning. Reading notes and group or individual worksheets were the main tools to ensure active learning. This part describes the procedure of the proposed HOT-based instruction. As mentioned earlier on the previous slide, different cognitive processes of Bloom's taxonomy were explicitly labeled and made known to the students throughout the instructional stages. Each lesson was proceeded in 5 stages as illustrated on this slide. Overall, lower order processes were used as stages of lead-in, pre-reading, and during reading to reinforce reading comprehension. Higher order processes were integrated into the stages of post-reading and unit project for developing students' problem-solving, critical, and creative thinking skills. This slide shows the students' posters for the unit project. Results from the first part of the survey showed that unlike traditional teacher-centered instruction, the students noticed that more class time was allotted for them to engage in learning. They spent more time in class on group discussions and question and answer activities. As for teachers' questions, the students could see that the questions were used to cultivate both lower and higher order thinking skills. The finding shows that the explicit strategies of HOT's instruction worked to get students' attention. Results from the second part of the survey showed that with systematic practices of HOT's texts, the students were more impressed by the different category of cognitive processes. Additionally, they were also able to distinguish lower order from higher order cognitive processes in the activities. Based on results from the third part of the survey, the students expressed that they had been accustomed to the question-based technique and that they had adapted to being evaluated formatively by how they answer higher order questions in the class. A finding yielded here was especially valuable for teaching Taiwan students. Only by consistent and systematic practices of higher order thinking skills embedded in learning tasks can Taiwan students accept the changes and become active and independent learners. Results of the fourth part of the survey showed the students' positive perceptions of HOTs embedded in technical reading instruction. In particular, they responded positively to impacts of HOTs on skills of communication, problem solving, and creativity. In addition, they considered HOTs activities helpful to enhance focal attention in class. This part reports the conclusion to the study. First, the students were able to perceive about the innovative activity design, which was different from that of traditional English language instruction. Second, the students expressed that they had been able to adapt to different levels of cognitive processes. Such a finding was particularly encouraging in that, except for their passive learning habits, formed in the traditional teacher-centered learning, the students were still able to develop a positive attitude towards HOTs after a semester of engagement. Last, findings of this study open a door to future incorporation of HOTs integrated in class activities to meet the CDIO standards 7 and 8. With regard to CDIO syllabus goals of personal and interpersonal skills, this study inspires engineering educators who strive to cultivate students' creative and critical thinking and communication in English. Despite the students' positive responses to HOTS, the study also raised some concerns. First, near 75% of the students were below the intermediate levels of English proficiency. Their struggles in using English as a foreign language for critical thinking and communication may become an obstacle in engaging in HOTS activities. Second, unlike traditional EFL reading instruction in which students respond passively to the teacher's explanations of vocabulary and grammar, HOTS-based activities require students' active engagement by responding to higher-order thinking skills. Higher-order activities can be more time-consuming, especially for EFL students with limited language proficiency, which in turn may hinder the students from being fully benefited from the HOTS activity.
Thank you, Cindy Chu, for that presentation. It's now open to the floor, and if anyone would like to ask any question, you can raise your hand on the video or through the icons at the bottom, or you can put it in the chat. Right, so I'll begin with my questions. It's a really interesting topic, and also the fact that you had two quite challenging things to teach, which is through a secondary language, and also, you know, it's difficult enough to teach HOTS. Did you consider using peer-to-peer learning? Because you mentioned the challenge of students may not want to challenge the teacher. Was that ever used?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Peer learning.
So peer-to-peer debating, because it's more on a equal level, so they could challenge each other more easily.
Yeah. The students were at below intermediate level of English proficiency. So having debates among them was a really difficult task for them to do and for the teacher to implement. Therefore, there was not much, especially in this paper, I would like to emphasize the cultural difference or the cultural part of the students. Students in Taiwan, they tend to be quiet in the classroom. They're not as outspoken, or they are not as, you know, much interest in sharing with others in class. So that we would need a lot of preparation time for them to get them ready to speak. And that would also spend some of the class time, especially when we have only 50 minutes a week to do both the English reading skills and higher order thinking skills both. So that a lot of things have to be redesigned, you know, to achieve the same goals as debates. So other kinds of collaborative activities were used. I think partially is to enhance or to secure students' feelings, so that they are not feeling like threatened that they had to speak in English or share in English in class. So that was actually one of the concerns, especially during the first semester of the implementation.
That makes sense. I have another question in the chat. So the question is, have you compared with traditional English reading? I'm not sure what traditional means, but
yes.
Would you be able to answer that question?
Yes. As I mentioned in the paper, traditionally, or even in present time, teachers tend to teach reading in English with vocabulary and grammar. So what teachers would do is to go through every sentences and to pick all the difficult new vocabulary words, and whenever they are for students to learn. Also, teachers would explain the sentence structure from the reading to reinforce their grammar skills. Right, so that is what we call traditionally, or what we call like grammar translation. Okay, so in this last year, when we were trying to trend when we had this in mind that engineering students need to develop higher order thinking skills, including creative skills and critical skills. We decided that we had to do away with traditional grammar translation methods for teaching reading, so that doesn't matter how time-consuming or how maybe intimidating for the students to share, to speak English in class, we had to design activities to enhance higher order thinking skills. And that's why we designed the survey. First of all, we were so worried. We were so worried at the beginning that, first of all, students were not, they had problem adapting this new design of English reading instruction. So there was a big worry actually when we were designing the survey after the implementation of HOTS in class. So that fortunately and gladly in this paper, the results that we share in this paper showed that it can be done. Even with shy students in Taiwan or with students with passive learning habits, still it could be done if as long as we make it clear, we make the rationale clear to the students why we wanted to do that and what kind of benefits that they can gain from the instruction.
Thank you. Gunther also has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. It's a really lovely presentation, and I particularly like the 5 steps that you mentioned to get to the much more in-depth learning of the students. So it's also what we are currently trying. I'm an ethics teacher, but so it's the tension between the giving students the freedom and scaffolding their process. So that's really nice. In your conclusions, you said, okay, there is one of the you present it as a minor or a more negative result is the limited English. For me, of the students, for me, it's not clear if you mean the difference between the start and the end of the course, because if they have a low entry level, that's not the fault or the issue of the teaching, that's your starting point. But if you measure a strong increase, that's of course a strong realization of your course then. So that's a clarifying question from my part.
Did you mean the increase of English proficiency or the increase of their hard skills?
Both. So I thought your conclusion was that the English proficiency was rather low, but it's unclear from your presentation whether it's you refer to the end of the course or the beginning or both. For me, it would be interesting to see what is and also for the hot skills, is what progress do students make? That's how I would judge a course.
Yeah, we constantly evaluate students' English proficiency by reading and writing. So it's like formatively evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what has been done even in so-called traditional English instruction. So that had to be done. So for that, we were not so worried that students would improve their reading comprehension skills as long as they are reading constantly every week. But the issue was that what else in addition to their improved English proficiency or reading comprehension? So that was actually what we thought, that something had to be changed to the reading instruction. So again, I like to make myself clear is that students improving their reading comprehension skills was not an issue, because we knew that there was an improvement even with a traditional like grammar translation. But I like to share that before that last school year, we used to use multiple choice questions to evaluate their reading comprehension skills. And then we had to change the evaluation mode to open-ended questions. to be aligned with HOTS, higher order thinking skills. If we wanted to test both students' English and thinking, we had to use something other than multiple choice questions. So,
yeah. I have another question. Sorry, I cannot see the chat, so I don't know if anyone else has a question.
Carry on with the second one.
Yeah, okay. So another thing that I noticed in your presentation is so you use my presentation will be on motivation, and the next one. I think you did a good job in motivating the students as well. So that's, from my perspective, a good thing. So you used texts that are really focused on their engineering skills and their focus. So on artificial intelligence and self-driving cars, etc. I'm an ethics teacher, and there I see that there are two ways to motivate students to think about ethics. And I think, well, my question is the same for language. There is on the professional development or the professional aspects, but also on the personal development. So we can make students think about and talking about engineering practices, but we can also make them think about ethics when we refer to their personal lives. So it's maybe also good to, well, or another approach to motivate students is to see what their interests are, and especially if you talk about English, and there is a lot of YouTubes in English available, to also try to make students watch English YouTube movies that are close to their personal interests, their hobbies, or whatsoever. So there the learning might even accelerate more, and you cannot do it alone, because then you miss the vocabulary of the technical aspects, of course. But this might, in terms of motivation, might also be an additional thing that you could consider.
Yes. Yeah. So the motivation was the issue, you mean? Okay.
I don't say that motivation was the issue in your. I have a focus of motivation, so that's, if you hire the motivation of students, then probably the learning will be better or smoother, or at least that's the promise of the motivational theories.
Actually, motivation should be an issue here, since I think the rationale for this freshman English program design was to add affective factors to linguistic factors in instruction. It's like what we say, like traditionally linguistic factors was the only issue to teachers. So therefore, to use multiple choice question to check students' reading comprehension in English was the one method to evaluate. But now that, like today in the keynote speech, I was happy to hear that 21st century skills were mentioned in the keynote. And that's why we wanted to change the way we used to teach freshman English, including reading in English. And also, I also like to raise the importance of, in the CDIO syllabus, there is we pay attention to the importance of interpersonal development, skill development. But a lot of time we tend to ignore the importance there. In the syllabus, there is an item called communication in English. And that is why in Taiwan, we had to emphasize that item here in Taiwan. And I'm sure that in a lot of Asian countries too.
Many thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
So I think we'll move on to our second speaker. Gunther will be presenting on motivation. So Gunther, I heard that you can't share your screen, is that right? Or will you try to? You're muted at the moment.
Can you see my screen now?
No, so what I could do is I'll share mine.
Okay. Shall I try it once more?
Go ahead.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I just need a little bit of time. It's my form of proficiency. Okay. Shall I start, Sarah, or?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you for attending this session on the second presentation. As I already mentioned in my questions to Cindy Xu, I see a lot of overlap. I am an ethics teacher, and I will tell you about a course in ethics that we do in the University of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And the title is Basic Needs Frustration in Motivational Redesign of Engineering Courses. So I'll talk about basic needs in this course. Oh yeah, okay. So you see the next slide now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So the journey started a few years ago in 2016. We have a large course of ethics, 2,000 students, part of a 20 ECTS bachelor program where we try to raise awareness on students on user society enterprise aspects in technological innovation. So these are 4 non-engineering courses of in the European credit system 5 ECTS. And if we ask the overall question afterwards in evaluation, how do you rate this course? Then the basic ethics course scores low, like 5.5 on a scale from 1 to 10, compared to the major courses on average in 7, and the other courses in this same use program. So we were looking at how to increase this. A little bit about the course. It's a complex course. We have 2,000 students. There are groups of 250, and they have a weekly lectures in these 240 students. And then once a week, they have tutorials in groups of 60. And we assess them in group work, in interim multiple choice tests, and multiple choice exams back in 2016. What is behind the low evaluation of the 2016 ethics and history course is mainly the organization. So the teachers were really well evaluated, so they were really motivated and hardworking, and the students really appreciated it. But the organization was always low. The reason is that it is a complex course, 2,000 students from 14 different engineering majors, 2 languages, a native language and English, and so it also links to the previous presentation, also issues there. There are 2 teams, a history team and an ethics team. There are different time slots, so there's really an organizational hassle, which showed to be very difficult. For me, in doing these evaluations, more and more, I got convinced that there is even something more behind it, and that's students' way of looking at ethics and history. So their epistemic cognition. So what is the role of knowledge? What is the role of ethics? Do I have to study it as an engineering student, etc.? So we started our journey with looking at motivation. How can we motivate students to do this ethics course? To do this, we used self-determination theory. And in self-determination theory, that's a motivational theory. The story is that there is a context with personality. Students have a certain personality, and there is a certain course setup, and the students react with their personality with the course setup. And they 3 basic needs, really core aspects of motivation, are then stimulated or not stimulated. That's autonomy, relatedness, and competence. So autonomy meaning making meaningful choices. Relatedness is how do you relate with peers and tutors in this course. And competence is being challenged or mastery. So am I challenged in this course? Am I doing something that I want me to challenge in, etc., etc. So that's the mix, what is happening. And this then leads to a certain motivation, which can be intrinsic and extrinsic. There are many more forms of motivation, which are less important for the story of this presentation. And being highly motivated or not, especially intrinsic, is then a prediction, according to this theory, to perceived and learned curriculum. So how do they perceive the course? So that was low in our case. What study effort do they do? How about the deep learning. So like in Cindy Shu's case as well. We used existing scales to study this, and in 2016 we used the basic psychological needs satisfaction scale, where you have 6 items, 6 questions per factor. So you see here autonomy, and there are 6 autonomy +1, +2, +3, and autonomy -1 in the 4th row, -2, -3. So 6 questions. The thing was, when we did factor analysis, that they didn't group together. So the 6 autonomy questions didn't group together. But if we forced the program to do 2 factors, we find something very remarkable, and that is that all positive formulated questions and all negative formulated questions clustered in factors, meaning that it's not so much the autonomy, relatedness, and competence that differs, but whether it's positively or negatively formulated. So we had 600 students answering this with a response rate of about almost 40%. So this was strong results. At that time, the self-determination theory started to look in not only satisfaction of basic needs, but also frustration. So we used 4 years later, we used another questionnaire of basic needs, again on autonomy, relatedness, and competence. This time specifically developed to measure basic needs satisfaction, but also basic needs frustration. And you see here that again, the clustering was not really like we would expect it. But if you do, so now we expected 6 factors, and then if you look at the most right column, you see a rough clustering of these items in the 6 different factors. So this is a good instrument looking at satisfaction and frustration, meaning that if you have students, you try to motivate them. Of course, you look at satisfaction because this leads to positive feelings, but often frustration is ignored. And we did a mathematical model looking at prediction of all kinds of motivation if we look at a model with only 3 aspects, or we looked at the 3 basic needs, or we look at a model with the 6 basic needs. So the 3 basic needs in satisfaction and the 3 basic needs in frustration. And what you see here is that especially for in the first column, the left column, you see the dependent. So these are the motivations. If you talk about extrinsic motivation and amotivation, both in the 2016 and the 2020 case, there was a much stronger prediction when we also used these frustration elements. So what we conclude from that is that if you use basic needs, and if you study motivation and you use basic needs, it is a strong addition to use the basic needs frustrations. We did this in our, so what you see here is in our 2016 course, where we asked a lot of situational factors. So that's the starting point. How do the students perceive course setup or assignment? Then we asked about basic needs. Then we asked about motivation. And then we asked about some aspects of the course, situational consequences, we call it here. And what you see here, what was very important for us in motivating students is that the low assessment in the assignment was strongly linked with the competence satisfaction. So students having low assessment of their assignment also give a low assessment of competence satisfaction, and they give a low intrinsic and identified motivation to elements of motivation, and they give a low overall score. So this is the first line that we got out of this research that was very important. and that's the red circles. In the blue circles, you see that the course setup was important for the negative emotion, so the negative basic needs, the frustrations, and it led to a motivation. So the course setup itself is strongly related to how students cope with their frustration. So these were two important aspects that we got out of the research, looking at also not only basic needs satisfaction, but also basic needs frustration. And this is the conclusion of our research, but it led us to look further, and we started challenge-based learning. So as also Cindy Xu and the higher order learning, we also pushed our students in the ethics to do that, and we call it challenge-based learning. So we invited external stakeholder company owners to be involved in the learning. We wanted to increase motivation, but we are still struggling with self-regulation. So there is a need to give the students freedom to make them to develop, but there is also a need to support them, and especially when they are frustrated, we need to support them in a specific way, and that's what we are still figuring out. I'll skip this, I can come back to that if you want. Some results of the course. And so the point we are now at is that or at least I believe that there is a difference between good frustration and bad frustration. So it's good to have frustration as a student to make you to get energy to find out new things. But it has to be well regulated from the course perspective. So the starting point is that you should take need profile, so differences in frustration into account, also how the frustration changes throughout the course. And I strongly believe that the course can impact this. So individuals can learn to cope adaptively with need frustrating experiences. So if you have a good course, for example, by good coaching, you can help students to cope with these frustrations. And that was my story. I think.
Thank you, Gunther. It's really interesting.
Stop sharing.
In the meantime, anyone have any questions? I actually noted a question which you started to answer right at the end, which was about frustration, because as you said, frustration is needed for growth and development. But where do you draw the line? How do you find that balance? So there's a few things here. You mentioned about having a needs profile. So should it be something we should be monitoring on every year? Or you mentioned about using better coaching processes. So what do you suggest that we should do?
Well, this last slide is where we are at. So these are also my questions. I have some ideas there, but that's the work that is now ahead of us. This year in this ethics course, we had an experiment with a small group, like 50 students, and we had a lot of in-depth coaching sessions with them to really do a follow-up on how they perceive the course and how they regulate this frustration. We approach this from self-regulation theory point of view, so that students, whatever course you give them, they go through this course and they regulate their own learning. And of course, if you have a very strict course, again, comparison with what Cindy Xu mentioned, so you can have a very strict course focusing on lower level activities or higher level activities. So you nudge students, but nevertheless they have to go through the course. In our course, we were really hard to the students in the sense that we opened it up very much, and so we left a lot open. So it created a lot of frustration. So it was a 9-week course, and The first 3 weeks, they were really completely lost, but we did weekly coaching sessions, and the coaches were even other persons than the teachers, so there was a kind of distance. So if they wanted to complain about the teachers, that was also possible. But the message was, this openness and this struggle you are having is normal, and this is the learning. And we also asked them, and I was very satisfied about this, we asked them 3 questions every week. So one question was, gives one learning experience. So one thing that you noticed this week that you learned. Second question is, why is this an important learning experience for you? So what is behind this question or this thing that you mentioned? And now that you said what you learned, how will the things you are learning make your learning next week different? So to give a very easy example, there was a student said, I didn't deliver something to my group. Why was this a learning experience? What is important? And you ask the why question a few times, and it appears that this student was struggling, really feeling responsible and struggling with this. And how is your feeling responsible linked to how you learn in this course? So the student reflects on this, and then by saying how the learning will be different next week. So we scaffold, we keep it very, very open, very deliberately very open, but we support them by saying what you experience is normal, it's good, it's part of the learning, but you are learning it now, and use this to improve your learning next week. So in supporting them to understand what they are learning, and by making it explicit and reflecting on that. And I think that is a way, but it's an hypothesis, so we will see. I think that's a way to look at this frustration. So the implicit message you give to the student is the following: I know that you have a frustration. I, as a teacher, will not take that away, because that's the exercise to do this open exercise. And I know you get frustrated, but you trust me. If you continue, you will pass this phase of unclarity, and you'll come in another phase later on. So please continue. And I think that is. I hope we will do interviews with the students after they hand in their final assignment. I hope that this shifts a kind of negative frustration to a more positive frustration to the students. But that's something we still have to find out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, you make the point about building trust, which is another challenge in teams, because they have frustration with each other as well. Yeah. And I wonder also if good versus bad motivation, good versus bad frustration is also linked to what you mentioned about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So I wonder whether there's a strong link between those two.
Yeah, this course, and I was when I was preparing this presentation, so we already ask a lot to the students on in terms of reflection. We didn't do research on the basic needs and the motivation, but it would have been really cool to. There is research done on how the basic needs, the perceptions of the basic needs of individuals changes throughout different weeks, and I would have been certain that so in the 3 first week they were all complaining that it was too vague and they didn't see what to do. So their basic needs would be really, really low in their report. And then I think it would have gone up, so the measurement would have shown that it goes up slightly, or that there are fluctuations. So some groups near the end had a real dip, saying, okay, what we have been doing for 7 weeks is completely wrong. We have to reshuffle. And so then what we are doing, and we are not working well as a group. So they became existential crisis, which of course has repercussions to the basic needs. But we didn't measure this in this course.
Great. We do have one in the chat. Sharon would like to ask, during the coaching, do the coaches offer learning strategies to the students to help them overcome their frustrations? So do they give them learning strategies to help them with that?
I'm not sure what is meant with learning strategies here. So what we do is what I told. So in the coaching sessions, the only thing we do is give us a learning experience, and then you talk about it, and then you can give a bit of advice, but not too much, because you expect them to find out a lot. Some reflect on, so it was a combined course with data analytics and ethics. So some say, okay, I have problems with Python, and I asked someone, and now I know more about Python. Others were really reflecting on their learning itself. Okay, I'm in this ethics course, and I really don't understand what the purpose is, and I'm trying to find out. And then my question in the coaching session is, okay, how will you find out? So I never give, not on the content level, but also not on the procedural level or on the learning strategy level, I give answers. So, but I nudge them to look for answers, and if I feel that it is really helpful, I give a bit more of a hint. But of course, this is a thin line. So when do you give a little bit more information? That's really intuitively that I determine that. And also here we are really interested to see how the students perceive this. So we will do some interviews there.
Cindy,
hi, this is. Oh, apologies.
Oh, sorry, Sharon. Yeah, do you want to carry on?
I thought I might jump in. I hope you don't mind. Thank you very much, Gunther, for that presentation and for answering the question. The reason that I was asking about whether there were learning strategies that you do offer the students is because it's an area that I'm also very interested in. So by learning strategies, I meant, for example, if you notice a student's frustrated because they're attempting to memorize something, or they were trying to work through something by themselves. There are certain learning strategies such as, changing the way you organize your learning material, knowing who to go to seek help. Some of these are actually quite basic, but what we do find with our students, and I'm from Singapore, that not all students are quite aware of the various moves that they could make to help their own learning. So you've got a really nice setup because you're coaching, and that's something we find we really need to do as well. It's one thing to give the strategies, it's totally something else to coach them in it. So I was just curious, in your approach, because you're giving the students lots of validation, which I think is important from the motivational angle. So I was just curious as to, how you coach them in their learning strategies as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. So for me, it's, I think we do not give them many concrete tips of do this or do that, but it's more of help each other. And if you really have a problem, come back to me. And so really giving small nudges and making them find out. And especially they learn a lot from each other if they struggle with this. So all coaching sessions were in a group of 4. So they work in a group of 4 students, and the coaching sessions were in a group of 4. So they learn a lot amongst themselves. The coaching session was also meant to go a step deeper. So if someone, so there was one of the examples was and this student struggling with Python, and then my question is, okay, what could you do? What do you think you want to do? And then he said, yeah, maybe ask help. I said, yeah, that's maybe a good thing. And who would you ask? Maybe my teacher of data analytics. So yeah, that's maybe a good thing. So ask him. And so you see that what was behind this struggle of this student was not per se knowing that that he could ask help to his data analytics teacher, but making the step to go to this teacher. Because was shy and yeah, it's not only in Asia, also in Europe, students have respect for respect, or it's a big gap between the student and the teacher. So it was really a decision to make. Okay, I'll ask for help. And in this coaching session, this was, I think, what this student needed. It was a very small nudge, but it was helpful for the student. But I didn't give any tips or so. It all came from the student itself.
Cindy, do you have a question?
Yeah, can I also share? We did not do coaching, but what we did was we label those skills that we wanted to incorporate in class. For example, if this week, remember I had those 5 stages in every week's class. So at every stage, there is a label there showing to the students, right now we are doing lower order question. Or another stage, right now we're doing higher order question. So every week we repeat doing the same thing, like mentioning and reminding students of what kind of skills that we aimed for. Every week we do them systematically and consistently. So that it's not once in a while thing. It's like, it's always there. The label are always there. They had to see that right now, in addition to reading comprehension, we are also answering this question because right now we're wanting to increase our critical thinking skills, for example. So there was one way that we prepare students to kind of get adapted to this new type of hard instruction. Another thing that I wanted to ask Gunter was that about frustration. Had you noticed students' frustration before you did the study, or you didn't know, so that you did a study wanting to know? And also another question was, if you had noticed students' frustration in ethics, did you kind of assume the root or the source of frustration?
Oh yes, we did notice the frustration. So this, yeah, to give you an example, so this questionnaire so we have 2,000 students in this course, and about 600 do answer it, and there are two open questions at the end. One is, what did you like about the course? And the other one is, what would you prefer to see, or what advice do you give to make changes? And this question, it's like Facebook hate. So there is a lot of frustration there. So it's 600 pages of this course is worthless and it sucks and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of frustration there. And this was one of the reasons why we started to do this motivational research. But the issue is, and that's one of the points I wanted to make in this paper, is that when we started it, doing the research in 2016, so we thought of this in 2014 already and preparing it. In self-determination theory, the focus was really on basic needs satisfaction, and that's I think a good thing, because the best way to increase quality is the positive vibes. So you should focus on the positive things. So what we did following the theory was really looking at the positive elements. So the positively formulated basic needs. Really focusing on how can we increase the intrinsic motivation, which is the highest level of motivation, etc., etc. So that's what we did. But then in the analysis, in the statistical analysis, we saw that this frustration was really not ignorable. It was because we did our factor analysis and there was really a split of these two. So that for me was an eye-opener, saying, okay, it's really, really important to focus on the positive things, but we should also focus on these negative things and on the frustration. And this led us to, among others, to this coaching session. So to really use this negative frustration and to turn it around in positive frustration to help students to make progress and to get intrinsically motivated, not to take away the source of the frustration, because that's the learning. And so it would be easy. The students say this course is so vague. And the first thing you do as a student, which I did as a younger teacher, was, okay, I take the source of this vagueness away, and I'll give more explanation to the students. But by doing that, you also take away the learning opportunities. So now we did another approach, saying we don't take away the source of the frustration, but we help the students to interpret it differently. And that's we have plenty of things to learn here, I think. So we are really at the beginning here. But for me, as in my head, I formulate this as the difference between good frustration and bad frustration, and how can we cope with it. I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
The reason why I wanted to ask you about your assumed source or root of frustration is that in EFL, English as a foreign language, we also, I don't know if this is similar to frustration, we call it anxiety. Students do have a lot of anxiety. I don't know if students in ethics have anxiety. Students, when they have to speak in a foreign language, they have a higher level of anxiety. And that's why we are calling them sometimes good anxiety and bad anxiety. Like, what is the degree of good anxiety you wanted to put into your class activities? So it's not like zero anxiety, like the kind of fun language classrooms that we have. So I don't know what you think about having students have certain levels of anxiety in your class, whether it's similar to what we do in foreign language class.
I think so, yeah. So it's I think it's a concept that's certainly related to the good. So the good and the bad anxiety is certainly related to the good and the bad frustration. So I guess they are really strongly linked, and they will measure slightly different things. But there's, for me, the point is that a lot of these students are really self-assured, and they say we don't need ethics, and so there is no so there is a lot of frustration if you say you have to go on. So they don't show their other feelings. So that's what they keep for themselves. And so all the fears they have, having a bad grade or not doing the right thing or whatever, is what they don't show there, because they are engineers and they know what science is, and you're a stupid philosopher and you don't know it. I'm not all do it like that, but that's a bit of the basic idea, and that's maybe something you can also.
I think it's interesting because your students are frustrated in ethics because they don't think it's important or necessary in their profession. Our students are frustrated because they do think English is very important in their career, but somehow they have this experience in failing learning the language. So my students and your students show both similar levels of frustration, but you know, that's why I wanted to go to the source. It's like the sources are different. They know English is so important, and that's why they feel frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say that all students don't like ethics, but there are a lot who like it. In this course, we also had now a lot of students who say, okay, I was in this ethics course and it's difficult for me because I'm a mathematics student and it's a completely other way of thinking. And I feel that slowly I get the idea of this other way of thinking. And now, now if I look at it like that, it's interesting. So I first thought it was irrelevant, but now at least I find it something interesting. I said, okay, that's good. That's your process, and I'm glad to hear that. So. But I see, so there is both frustration, but with different backgrounds in your case and in my case. Yeah.
Great. I didn't think we would fill the hour, but we have. It's been a really interesting discussion. I want to thank both speakers for presenting their work, and I want to thank everyone for joining us and the interesting questions, and the hosts for keeping it smooth from the technical side. So I think we'll just wrap up now and have a 10-minute comfort break for the next session. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.